This is a true story. It happened to a friend of actually a neighbor of mine. Nobody can say that Patty Pringle isn't a good neighbor. And what people do in the privacy of their own backyards is their own affair. Like I said, I don't meddle. So when I saw that my next door neighbors, the Taylors, were planning a big barbecue, I said, fine. I hope they get good weather for it, even if I'm not invited. But when I happened to peek out my upstairs window that overlooks their backyard, you know, the one you have to stand on the chair to see out of, I saw that Mrs. Taylor was going to be serving salmon, a whole grilled salmon. And at $12 a pound, who's she trying to impress? And it certainly wasn't my business when I saw their cat, Muffy, jump up on the picnic table and start to nibble on the salmon. Luckily, Mrs. Taylor came outside and caught that stupid cat in the act. Anyway, by the time I came downstairs onto my patio, I could hear Mrs. Taylor having a hissy fit. Look what that stupid cat's done! My dinner's ruined! Well, the first thing she did is grab the cat and hand it over to her precious little Emerson. Now, Emerson's going on and on about how the cat has eaten the eyes out of the salmon and how the cat's chewed up half the salmon's face. And would you believe Mrs. Taylor, just as cool as a cucumber, told Emerson not to say a word to anybody at the party? Mrs. Taylor told him that she'll fix the salmon by decorating it with parsley. Imagine disguising a chewed-up salmon with parsley! Mrs. Taylor and Emerson shook hands and zipped their lips on their little secret. I had to go out for an hour around 5, you know, when the grocery store marks down the baked goods. When I came back, the Taylor's party was in full swing. Cars parked everywhere, an awful mess. How was I even supposed to get into my own driveway? Well, as long as they were having a good time, what did it matter? Everybody, and there must have been 20 very loud people there, as if one extra person would have made a big difference. They were just raving about the dinner. Great salmon. Oh, this fish is amazing, Jenny. You must give me the recipe. I've never had fish this tasty. Well, they've never had my stewed catfish, that's for sure. And there was Mrs. Taylor, just soaking in the compliments, when Emerson came running up to her. Mom, I've got to tell you something. Well, Mrs. Taylor tried to shoo him away, but he kept tugging at her arm. Finally, he just blurted it out. Mom, Muffy ate the fish and now she's dead! Well, you should have seen Mrs. Taylor's face. I'll tell you one thing, her underwear and fine delicates never come out that white on the wash line. Now everyone started screaming about poison salmon. Well, the shrieks and cries from that backyard, people rushing to the hospital to get their stomachs. Not what I would call a very successful dinner party. The next day, I happened to see Mrs. Taylor and Emerson in the backyard. I popped my head over the fence and asked how things had gone the night before. A disaster. Everybody hurling and spewing, said rude little Emerson. Their friends won't even speak to them now, said Mrs. Taylor. And if that's not enough, the cat is dead. Oh, by the way, I said, about Muffy. Last night driving back from the market, I ran over your cat. I didn't want to disturb your big fancy party, so I just left the poor little thing on your porch. Nobody can say that Patty Pringle isn't a good neighbor. This is a true story. It happened to a neighbor of mine, which is probably why the Taylors don't serve fish for dinner anymore.